This episode is proudly supported by Montague, handpicked for you.
So the eating experience of our plums is sweet. That's a primary driver. It's got to be sweet, but it's also got to have enough acid, because the mix of acid and sugar is what gives fruit its flavour. And in a plum, it tends to be slightly higher acidity. And then a really nice, full, not dry, but juicy explosion of juice into your mouth as you bite into it. That's nirvana for us in terms of plum.
For more information, go to montague.com.au.
I was cooking at the weekend with Ben in the Seahorse, and we had some small turbot for grilling over the fire. They were just unbelievable. I mean, really, really unbelievable. And, stiff as boards, beautiful kind of snotty slime all over the backs of them, and they were just fantastic. So that's the stuff that's around here at the moment.
This is Fishtales, a seafood podcast. I'm John Susman. Mitch Tonks is a great mate and a true seafood inspiration. In the over 20 years since we first met, Mitch has built several seafood empires, all the time with the enthusiasm and commitment only a true lover of all things seafood can do. Whilst there are many hard-working, committed and talented individuals working in every area from catching to cooking, there are a few who have as much involvement in all aspects of the seafood industry as Mitch. Mitch has become one of the most respected and knowledgeable seafood people in the UK, and an acclaimed restaurateur, chef and author in the process. His Seahorse Restaurant has won many awards, and his Rockfish takeaway and restaurant chain is growing exponentially with equal acclaim. Today we catch up with Mitch again after 18 months, during which his business, based in the southwest of the UK, has gone through a most turbulent period.
Hi, I'm Mitch Tonks. I'm the founder and CEO of Rockfish over here in the UK. I am sat in my kitchen in Brixham overlooking a wonderfully still Brixham Harbour this morning. I mean, the whole last few years have almost been lost years, kind of a bit of a roller coaster, really, good bits and bad bits. The start of this year, we rely heavily on our summer trading, was really slow. I think we were probably about 40% down on footfall in the southwest of England. I think a lot of people were just going abroad, and I did go abroad for 5 days and realise where everybody was. But we ended up having a really, really great summer. Very busy in the restaurants, which was a really good sign. But all the while we were just dealing with inflation. Literally month on month, supplier after supplier, putting up prices overnight, and that was very difficult to manage. Reprinting menus, having to push prices up, engineer a menu to be competitive, deal with wage inflation, then of course the dreaded energy issues, which have been massive for UK hospitality. And give you some idea, we 5 of our restaurants for gas alone came out of contract. They used to be 64,000 a year for the 5 restaurants, and they went up to 244,000 a year. And so you can imagine the impact of that, and that's just gas on 5, and we've got electric and another 5 to go. So I mean, it's been a pretty difficult environment to trade in, and probably harder than COVID actually. At least then we kind of knew our enemy, and I think we had support from the government. Whereas now I just feel like we're all literally left to crash and burn and do what we can to get through it, do what we have to get through it.
Although seafood supply has been good for local operators in the UK, there's been a dramatic increase in the price of wild fish in particular.
Supply was okay. There was plenty of fish, and but a lot of the fish price has been driven up now because of the European markets. In Holland, there's a big decommissioning program, so there's a lot more people wanting the fish that's landed here in Brixham. And on the whitefish market with Russian imports, having been heavily levied by the British government, and obviously the American government, meant that there was a lot more people buying Icelandic and Norwegian fish, which is what we used to buy, and obviously the Spanish doing the same, all the top quality stuff. And so the prices have literally doubled almost in 3 months on whitefish. In fact, over doubled, and our prime fish is just creeping up. In fact, we were paying 45 quid a kilo for turbot on the market floor a couple of weeks ago. I mean, that is a price that's unheard of. And, when that gets to somebody's restaurant, that's £100 a kilo on the bone. I mean, it just becomes a kind of like who's going to eat it,
Mitch has always been an enthusiastic advocate for local wild seafood. As he notes, The challenge now is that the cost is going to make eating wild fish potentially an elite experience.
Yeah, I think there always has been. I think the barrier for it now is the price. And of course, the environmental issues are widening now for fishing. So we used to talk a lot about fish stocks as really in isolation about the challenges that fishing face. Now we talk about fishing methods, we talk about carbon release, we talk about CO2 emissions from engines. I mean, the debate has just got wider and wider and wider, and the conditions are harder and harder and harder for fishermen to comply and work. So, it's a pretty tough environment, I think.
Brexit has had a tumultuous effect on the seafood industry in the UK. Originally welcomed by many of the UK fishing industry, but overwhelmingly it is now a cause for anger and disappointment. Exporters have routinely struggled to get their shipments through the borders, resulting in loss of income or, in the extreme cases, entire markets, while small-scale fishers have felt unable to compete with larger European vessels which have retained some access to UK waters.
I mean, Brexit is, Brexit certainly made it harder for exporters. So, for example, obviously we used to just send our fish straight over to Europe, no problem, it would go on a lorry, arrive the next day. Now there has to be a certain amount of health certification and labelling. And if you and I were to share a lorry of, I've got 5 ton of crab, you've got 5 ton of finfish, and you haven't labelled and we're on the same lorry, and you haven't labelled your fish properly, they reject the whole lorry. So that means that we lose all of our product, basically it rots at the port because the paperwork hasn't been done correctly, and there's been lots of examples of that. So people are very nervous about sharing transport. That doesn't really happen anymore, and the price of a health certificate has just been, has rocketed. Local councils won't do it now, so it's all having to be done privately and independently. So exporting is incredibly hard, and what a lot of and also there's a tariff. So what actually happens is that the British any exporter is more expensive than somebody in Europe who can access our market and just import it. And so really what we've done is we've opened up our market for the Europeans, and we're not even keeping our fish anymore, we're just giving it to them.
Mitch's passion for sharing his knowledge and enthusiasm for eating seafood has been a lifelong mission. Pivoting to delivering fish to consumers at home during COVID was a natural progression for him. COVID provided the ideal opportunity to launch his retail solution. Yeah,
so we're 12 months in now, and the whole idea was really born from selling fish straight off the boat. In lockdown, I got our little fishing boat, was out fishing, and a skipper called me and said, "Look, Mitch, I got a load of really great fish on board, but I'm going to land it on the market and get hardly any money for it. It's a real pain." And I said, "Nick, why don't you just land it on the quayside? I'll send an email out to our customers and let's see if we can sell it directly to people." And I couldn't believe it. We trebled the value of the catch. There were hundreds of people lining up on the quayside to buy the fish off the boat, and it just led me to believe that if we could get fish straight from boats to people, it's got to be better than a very clunky supply chain. And then it occurred to me that, when I ran fish shops, the amount of waste that we have in, you buy a lot of fish in hoping for a good day, it pours a rain, and of course, you end up having wastage. And Sainsbury's, Tesco's, these are two of our biggest retailers, have all closed their fish counters, their wet fish counters, and nobody closes a profitable counter. And they've obviously closed them because they're hard to staff and there's a lot of wastage. And I became really passionate about, if we're going to do all this work in sustainable fishing, then we have to kind of have sustainable consumption. And that sustainable consumption means introducing freezing into the supply chain, so that when fish is landed in abundance, we portion it on the quayside. We send it fresh on days that we've got it fresh, and we send it on frozen on days we've got it frozen. But the point is that there is zero waste in the supply chain, and it goes straight to the customer, whereas via a fish counter, it goes through a clunky supply chain, which puts the fish at risk anyway, and then it ends up on a fish counter waiting to be bought, and it might not be bought, and that's the end of it. So it's gone really well in the first year, John, which is great. We're really delighted with the numbers, and we're converting a lot more people to this kind of sustainable consumption, as we call it, of seafood.
Mitch has been driving sustainable consumption of seafood for years. His love for premium preserved seafood is also long-lived, and launching his own range of British seafood was a natural progression of this passion.
Yeah, we had a record week last week, which is good. Yeah, it's been really, really good, and so I I'm delighted, John, really, and I think next year we got bigger plans. And the other thing that's gone very well for us is we started tinning fish, as you know, taking British seafood at its prime and canning it. And we were originally doing that with a Spanish partner, which is great, and we're going to continue to do that. But we also think that we are going to start being able to can in the UK this year, which is going to be really, really exciting. It's been received really well, John. I think it's one of those things probably like in Australia, you walk down the aisle of a supermarket and look at tinned fish, and it's 40p, 50p, and your mind just sort of thinks, what on earth is in the tin for 50p? And when we both know the kind of cost and value of seafood, and it really is a forgotten category. No one cares about it, and it's always seen as sort of cheap food. But we both know that when you take a magnificent piece of fish, it's got to start with a magnificent piece of fish, and you put it through a process of tinning. You're not looking for it to taste like the fresh equivalent. That there's a lot of magic happens in the tin, and you have a completely different product, something that's really wonderful and very versatile. And I think people are just waking up to what you can do with it. And I go out with Jakey, and we do these tinned fish evenings. So, we make Sri Lankan curries with tinned mackerel, which is delicious, cuttlefish in ink sauce on wet polenta, straight from a tin over the top. Make wonderful sardine pâtés, crisp fry, tinned sardines, and crunch them over the top of somtam Thai salads. I mean, it's such an amazing product. You don't have to just eat them from the tin with a piece of bread, right? I mean, you make a sardine ragu, pecorino and gnocchi. I mean, it's like the ultimate good for you food, and it's cheap and it's delicious and supports sustainability. I think that tinned seafood is a thing that's really excited me, John. I think that I'm not sure I'm excited about the future for seafood. I think we face so many challenges that I think it's going to be a few years of getting down to the ground and working those out. I mean, we got a lot of environmental pressure here from various groups about the carbon release and all those things. So I see ourselves in for a year of challenges, and we got to start thinking a little bit differently about the future. But we'll get there. But it's not plain sailing anymore, I don't think.
The term underutilised species can be confusing and is sometimes misused as a means to replace the major seafood species that consumers are seeking.
I think the problem is, John, here is that we don't really have a lot of underutilised species. It's something that seems to be coined by environmentalists and TV chefs when they, say, look at this wonderful gurnard, isn't it amazing? Let's all eat gurnard, it's phenomenal. Well, two things about that particular species, and red mullet's the same and turbot's the same, is that our turbot isn't an alternative species, but it's certainly alternative to what most people think of fish as being a white fish, is that there's no data on any of these species at all. So we shouldn't just jump from one into the other. And secondly, gurnard's delicious, but it's not cheap, and it's not going to replace cod. And also there's, when I walk around the market in the morning, there is nowhere near enough of this stuff to feed a nation. These are just species that haven't been recognised yet, but they don't have the potential to replace the big white fish and the salmon and the prawns that mostly people eat and call it fish.
Each new day begins as though it was his first for Mitch. From his base in Brixham, Mitch is acutely aware of what he's serving in his restaurants, as mostly he's been responsible for buying it on the Brixham market auction floor.
Oh man, I mean, this time of year is great for us, right? We're in the winter, and all the boats are out fishing when they can, weather-wise. The water's starting to cool, and the fish is great. I mean, Dover soles right now, one of our most valuable catches. Fetching 25-30 pound a kilo regularly all the time. And, so wonderful firm flesh, amazing. You see these things glistening over there, phenomenal. Looking at our shellfish like mussels over there now, I mean, fat, plump, utterly delicious, really great. There's whitefish like whiting coming in, and hake at the moment is, wonderfully kind of fat. And turbots. I mean, I was cooking at the weekend with Ben in the Seahorse, and we had some small turbots in for grilling over the fire. They were just unbelievable. I mean, really, really unbelievable. And stiff as boards, beautiful kind of snotty slime all over the backs of them, and they were just fantastic. So that's the stuff that's around here at the moment.
Through his extended network of restaurateurs, chefs and foodie mates, along with his seafood supply business, Mitch is intimate with the trends in food across London and the UK. And he is seeing a polarisation of restaurants occurring there right now.
There's some really, really great new openings. And I mean, London in a way, in central London, is overheating really. And, restaurants are packed. I was up there, last week, and, my favourite place is just wonderful. You open the door, there's that noise, there's that sound and that clatter, and that real hum of people enjoying themselves. But, you sit down at a table, and, you look at a ribeye steak, béarnaise and chips in a kind of, a bistro, or, okay, you're in Mayfair, and you're paying 54 quid. And, add a glass of wine, add a starter, and you're on 100 quid for a lunch. And that's not even a lunch that we go mad at, like you and I would, Sus. That's just a basic fill yourself up, right? So I think there is a kind of like a two-tier restaurant industry, really. There are those that are doing really well and they're attracting the crowds that are not affected by all of this, and price doesn't matter. And then there are those restaurants where we're feeding the people and creating something for everyday people, and that's tough. That's tougher. Well, I mean, we've got 3 sites that I've got the keys to, that we were starting one next week, first week of January, and another in the summer. But I'm actually getting to the point now where I'm considering mothballing those for 12 months, and just to, carry on paying the rents and just see how everything really unfolds. And, I mean, that's just one of the options that I sort of think in my mind. But, it'll all bounce back. We're in a temporary hiatus of, coming out of COVID, the global economy affected by war. And I think it's very prudent to, I feel very responsible for the 300 people that work for us, and which grows to 400 in the summer. And I feel like I kind of want to protect that rather than just sail into this with all guns blazing, sails up, and get flattened. And but we will be bouncing back, and we will see growth again. And it's just timing, I think.
Mitch is an eternal optimist. His undying pursuit of maximising people's enjoyment of seafood is as inspiring as it is a savvy business strategy.
What's exciting me, probably the thing I'm most excited about, John, is the online seafood market and tinning fish. I mean, I'm incredibly passionate about what we do at the restaurants. I'm obviously looking forward to the summer when people return to the region, which is going to be super. And but I'm really, really passionate about changing the way people buy seafood in Britain, right? And I want it to be the future that people in various locations online, or whether they go to one of I want to create a virtual fishmonger where there's a fishmonger with no fish. There's just frozen fish and a screen, and somebody will be in there to take your order, and your fish will arrive with you the next day at your holiday home, at your house, wherever you want it to be, direct from the port. And that's what I want to see for the future. And the tinning, I want to see our fish tinned in Britain, but also I want to can small reserve catches. So if a boat catches 10 boxes of red mullet, I want to take that fish, I want to be able to fillet it, pin it, and I want to can it the next day, so that we've actually got prime fish being canned as it's landed. And those things just become incredible gastronomic experiences in their own right. And I'm really kind of like preserve the value and preserve the quality of a small boat's catch.
Cooking is an innate part of Mitch's life. For as long as I've known him, not a single day goes by without some conversation and consumption of seafood. He continues to motivate, inspire and support everyone in seafood, from the water to the plate. There is sure to be many exciting projects developed in Mitch's kitchen over a piece of fish in 2023.
Over winter for me, I mean, it's fish stew time, so I love getting, there's nothing nicer than spending an afternoon in the kitchen here at home and a pile of crab shells, roasting them up, making a really, really wonderful shellfish stock, and then getting a lovely kind of, sofrito base going in there, some Pernod, some wine, boiling it off, adding the stock, adding a whole load of whole fish, blitzing it up and passing it, and making a wonderful base for orzo and other fresh fish and red mullet to go into it. So you get this really kind of wonderful, rich, gorgeous stew that you sit on a kind of wintry day with a nice bit of chili aioli. And but the other thing I'm doing, Sus, which is great, I'm doing a book with the Al Gattinero guys and the Seahorse guys. So Ben and Jake and the Al Gattinero guys in Italy get Ruggiero's recipes in there and Ben and Jake's recipes. So we do a new cookbook, and I'm also working on a tinned seafood cookbook as well. So those are 2 really great projects that I should be doing too.
This is Fishtales, a seafood podcast. A Deep in the Weeds production. I'm John Susman. Follow us on Instagram at Fishtales Seafood Podcast or email us at fishtalespodcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay tuned for more tales from beneath the surface of the seafood world every Friday on your podcast app.